Hey Young Titans, today we're going to start by going into Photoshop, and I'm going to be working with a project that I already started with you. So I just opened up my project and you can see I had to change some of my textures because I forgot to save, and just like you, I make mistakes. So we should remember to basically every time we do something cool, take a second to press Command S, which will, you saw that little thing come up, it'll basically save your project. Or you could go to File, Save, and this is grayed out because I just Command S and it worked. So it won't let me save twice in a row unless I make a change. So now I can go to File, Save again. All right, so anyway, I know it's saved now. I'm going to continue moving forward. So one thing that you'll notice with my new textures is that I have this, which isn't really a texture, it's an animal that has a texture. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my eraser and change it up in the options area so that I have a low hardness. And I'm going to make the size a little bit bigger. And I'm going to erase everything I don't need from this picture because all I want this project to be about is textures. I don't want it to be about specific animals. So part of what I don't need is obviously this area that's over here that's empty. And another part of what I don't need, so I'm erasing that with a really large eraser, another part of what I don't need is anything that determines what this thing is other than its texture. So I'm moving around and I'm getting rid of the eyes and the face because those are just going to be distractions to my viewer. I want my viewer to focus on the texture. Okay, so pretty much everything that's over here is going to be a distraction. If the viewer has something specific to look at, like eyes, they're going to notice this texture above every other texture, and they're not going to look at anything else. So you can't give them something that has that high degree of a focal point. All right, so now that I changed this texture, and you can see it has a very interesting shape, but I am noticing as I move it that there's some parts that I missed as I erased, so I'm trying to do a better job by going back and finding all those parts. All right, so back to what I was doing. I'm going to go use my eraser to get rid of anything that's not a texture. I'm also going to change the shapes of each object as I go. By the way, it really helps if I have my Move tool selected and I click this Auto Select. This is going to be a major change. People who don't watch this part of the video or forget to do it are going to have way more work because every single time that you move something or you need to move something or you want to work on something else, you would have to come to the layers bar, find what you want to work on and click it rather than just using auto select, which will allow you to grab as you wish. I just basically grab the top thing anytime I click something, which will allow me to quickly switch to my ruler and get through my work way faster. So I highly recommend that you click what you want to work with by having that auto select checked. Okay, so what you'll notice is that I did change the shapes of many of my images. I pretty much took all the harsh edges away, except I kept these here to show you, but I pretty much erased all the harsh edges. And you can see I also brought in a few more pieces because I felt like I'm probably not going to have enough to fill everything that I want to fill so far. So you could also see that they're overlapping, which is not a big deal. You could have them spaced out if you want, if that helps you, but it's unnecessary because ultimately they're all going to come out together. I also purposely brought this one in because you can see that there's a swirl there. It also has a word right here, but that swirl is one of the company's logos, which means that somebody owns it. So again, I'm going to delete it from my project. All right. Now I'm going to go in and start putting things the way I want them. Basically making the composition interesting and trying to have some movement in it and have some variety. You can see that I left this thing a rectangle on purpose, but everything else is not a rectangle. You can also see that I left these harsh edges, but in this case it's not going to matter because I am having that go off the page. So I'm then going to start bringing in each of my textures to overlap the other texture, and you can see that because of the soft eraser, it looks like things are blending into each other, which is exactly the effect I wanted. So I want this lion fur to be above whatever this green molecule-like stuff is. So I'm going to come over here to my layer area, and you can see that I do have my auto select on my Move tool, so I can grab whatever I want to work with. And not only do I grab it, but it goes exactly to the layer that that object is on. So I want this layer, I'm going to move this up a little bit, to go above my green slimy thing. So I'm just going to go and do that. So now you can see that I moved it above here, and now it's above. So if I want something to change in the order that I have it in, as far as the layers are concerned, it's an easy fix. Another thing I wanted to show you that's an easy fix is when you do have one or two rectangular pieces, you could Command T them to turn them on a diagonal, and that way you'll be able to, what's the word I'm looking for, make it so that it doesn't look like a tile to everything else. So this to my left is an example of what a piece would look like if it were all tiled and we used only rectangular pieces. Now I didn't blend the edges in this example because I didn't feel it was necessary. I just wanted you to know what I meant when I said something like tiled. So this has very limited movement because everything is straight up and down, and these harsh lines really stop us from transitioning to the next piece or showing any movement around our page. It just looks like almost like a checkerboard. And this represents more like a collection than a composition, which is what I'm trying to make you make. You can see in this example the person used lots of textures and they made them into shapes so that they can drag the eye around the piece to different textures rather than having them be static and you're looking at them separately. Okay, so we don't want to promote separation. We want to make it look like there's movement in our piece and action, and that we're leading the eye around to different areas. Now, I'm not saying you have to cut out a swirl in every thing, but you might want to have something like in my example that I'm about to continue with on my video, how I use the rope. All right, stay tuned. So I have this kind of squared off, and that's a pretty big piece, so I'm probably going to overlap it with other things like my cow. So again, I'm going to just move my cow above my sponge, and there you go. Okay, so it's only fair to mention that I did add a few more textures. I found that 12 wasn't enough in this case. I do have some things here that are interesting shapes that create movement. For example, my rope. If I picked anything long and twisted or long and curly like that, like maybe woman's wavy hair or a piece of bacon, something like that is a great thing to have a viewer's eye brought through the piece. I also have this like lava, which creates movement here. So you can see that I'm trying to create, also these lines create movement in my piece by having them all go in the same direction. This seems to be the focal point. Everything seems to be pointing to that, but it's not so obvious that it's annoying to the viewer. So that's a great way to have a good composition. Composition is something really hard to teach, but one thing I could tell you is variation in size and shape definitely helps composition. Overlapping helps composition. Having things go off the page helps composition. Having your object not directly in the center improves composition, or your focal point, I should say. An area of emphasis or an area that stands out. And having things that are almost like arrows pointing to different areas are a great thing to have in your piece. All right, so you can see that you can't see any of my background. If I had a white area like that, that would be a negative. I'd want to keep everything filled so I have nothing but textures in my piece. And I don't have any of those harsh lines that you were able to see like this one left visible. Once I've accomplished all those things, the last thing I want to do is add my name to it. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on a high layer because I want to be able to see my name when I put it on. And I'm going to use my text tool. Once I click and release, I'm not dragging a box or anything, just click and release. I can change the size of my text up here. I'm going to make it about 36 because I don't want it to be so large that it's bigger than that it stands out in the piece. And I'm going to pick a text that looks cool. I never want to stick with the standard Myriad Pro because it's boring and it's default. I want everything in my piece to be original and not be like my neighbors, including something as seemingly unimportant as my name. So I found the text that I like. You guys might not have this text available. I put it in specially, and there's a video on that later if you want to learn how. I'm going to put my name the way I want you guys to, which is your first name, your last initial, and your grade. I'm going to put myself in grade 9. Notice it's not in the center of the piece because it's not what the piece is about. It's something that's just there in case someone says, oh, I really like this. I wonder who did it. They'll have some place to look, but it's not, my piece is not about that. So it's not going to be big and it's not going to be in your face. All right, so that's how you finish TC1, Texture Collage 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is save. And the second thing I'm going to do is start TC2, which is way shorter and easier.